Hey guys, it's me, Chris.
And it is I, Robert.
And it is us,
the Film Claimers.
That's right. And as per tradition, March is our March of the Zombies month.
That's right. We're going to start talking about a new zombie franchise today, although I think we're just going to wrap it up this month.
I don't know. I found some ththings about this franchise that could be interesting to carry forth, or at least Patreon forth.
Oh my goodness, a game changer.
Yeah.
Say you.
Okay, Sarcasmo.
No, I mean it.
Well, and we've also wanted to get more into foreign language films, right? And so we've talked about doing like things like The Orphanage and, The Devil's Backbone and, a little bit more of like Guillermo del Toro stuff. And so we really wanted to kind of enter into this. This was a really good opportunity having wrapped up some of those other franchises. And so today, dear listeners, we're talking about Rec, which is a 2007 Spanish found-footage zombie film co-written and directed by Jaume, Balagueró, and Paco Plaza. I'm sorry. The film stars Manuela Velasco as a reporter who, with her cameraman, accompanies a group of firefighters on an emergency call to an apartment building to discover an infection spreading inside, with the building being sealed up and all occupants ordered to follow a strict quarantine.
Rec is considered to be one of the best examples of found-footage horror films and has spawned an entire franchise of sequels, including an American remake, Quarantine.
Okay, listeners. We have to tape everything for fuck's sake. This is Rec.
Angela Vidal, played by Manuela Velasco, is an ambitious young reporter who has the unenviable job of hosting While You're Asleep, a late-night show nobody watches, where tonight she's assigned to follow around firefighters in Barcelona in the hopes of catching a kitten rescue or a drunk guy with something questionable up his Spanish starfish. Just when Angela starts regretting her career path and contemplating a pivot to pole dancing, salvation arrives in the form of an emergency call. An old lady in an apartment building is allegedly screaming like a banshee and attacking people. Jackpot. This is the kind of gold that turns a second-rate TV journalist into an award-winning sensationalist. She and Pablo follow the firefighters to the scene, armed with nothing but a microphone, blind optimism, and a camera that will soon capture more bodily fluids than anyone signed up for. Upon arrival, they meet the apartment's residents. There's a grumpy old woman, a nervous mom with her sick little girl, and a suspiciously sweaty landlord who clearly knows something and is way too quiet about it. Then there's the elderly woman who was the subject of a distress call. She stands in her dimly lit apartment hallway, breathing heavily, her nightgown doing the absolute minimum in terms of covering those pancake areolas. Suddenly, she launches herself at a firefighter and takes a chunk out of his neck like he's a human tapas platter. This understandably causes some mild concern. The firefighters and police attempt to de-escalate the situation in the most professional way possible by screaming, flailing, and making themselves objectively worse. But just as things start to get interesting, the government suddenly quarantines the entire building, sealing everyone inside with no explanation. While this is great news for Angela's career, it's terrible news for literally everyone else. What follows is a masterclass in panic, denial, and bad decision-making. The bitten firefighter, instead of heroically succumbing to his wounds, decides to get back up and start biting people. One by one, people begin to get infected, turning into angry, drooling, human blenders with zero respect for personal space. Angela, to her credit, does what any good journalist would do. She shoves her microphone into the faces of terrified survivors, demands answers, and makes sure Pablo keeps filming, no matter what, for fuck's sake. Meanwhile, the residents cycle through all 5 stages of grief at record speed. The landlord tries to keep everyone calm while clearly hiding information that could have helped 20 minutes ago. The mom insists her sick daughter is totally fine. Don't even worry about it. And a health inspector shows up in a hazmat suit about as thick as a wet tissue. Through a combination of eavesdropping and sheer dumb luck, Angela and Pablo discover the horrifying truth. The infection isn't just rabies on steroids. It's demonic possession in pandy form. It all started with a little girl named Niña Medeiros, who was locked away in the building's penthouse attic because apparently that's how the Vatican handles exorcisms now. Father Dr. Father Dr. Albeda, the world's worst exorcist/scientist, tried to cure her but accidentally made her contagious. Now all poor little Nina Medeiros can utter is, "Lick me!" Sad. Searching for another way out of the building, Angela and Pablo frantically run up the stairs to the closed-up penthouse where they find the worst, or best, Airbnb experience imaginable. Pentagrams, occult scribblings, MTV's Dan Cortez, and terrifying, grotesquely emaciated Nina Medeiros, who has spent decades marinating in pure evil. As Angela and Pablo try to escape in the pure darkness, Pablo gets smacked into oblivion by an unseen force and drops the camera. Desperate to find the camera so she can see through its night vision, Angela crawls toward the camera, screaming for help, only to be violently dragged into the darkness by something unseen, easily cementing this as a top 30 worst moment for Angela in her career thus far.
The end.
MTV's Dan Cortez.
It's a top 30 worst moment.
In a career filled with worst moments.
Rec premiered in August 2007 at the Venice International Film Festival out of competition in the opening and closing film sessions. It was shown in October 2007 at the Sitges Film Festival and the Malaga International Week of Fantastic Cinema in November 2007, before going on general release in Spain later that month. The film was released on DVD in North America in 2009 after Quarantine and Quarantine 2 had already released.
That's right, because I saw that before I saw this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Rec has a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes with an audience score at 82%. The site's consensus reads, plunging viewers into the nightmarish hellscape of an apartment complex under siege, Rec proves that found footage can still be useful as an effective delivery mechanism for sparse economic horror.
Reviewing the film for BBC, Jamie Russell called it a runaway roller coaster of a fright flick, praising the faux docu-handheld style and the sense of claustrophobia and confusion, claiming that Rec will definitely jangle the nerves. Don't say jangle. However, Russell criticized the lack of substance and a one-dimensional supporting cast.
Oh, fuck you. Bloody Disgusting awarded the film 4.5 stars out of 5, with the reviewer writing, Rec has it all, and is probably one of the best Spanish horror films in recent memory. Bloody Disgusting later ranked the film 11th in their list of the top 20 horror films of the decade, with the article stating, out of all the shaky cam films, this one is arguably the best.
In the early 2010s, Time Out conducted a poll with several authors, directors, actors, and critics who worked within the horror genre to vote for their top horror films. Rec placed at number 54 on their top 100 list.
Somewhere right smack in the middle. It does have some accolades, though. At the Goya Awards, which is Spain's equivalent to the Oscars, it was nominated for Best Special Effects.
Interesting. But it won Best New Actress and Best Editing.
I am glad that Spain is giving Oscars to horror movies. At the Festival de Cine de Sitges, which is Spain's version of the Chainsaw or Saturn Awards, it won Best Director, Best Actress, Audience Award for Best Motion Picture.
And got a special mention as the grand prize for European fantasy film.
Oh. As we said earlier, Rec has spawned a franchise of 6 films, starting with this one, which we said was at 90% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, and like I was shocked to kind of see the record of scores for this franchise, and I didn't realize how many were in it. I just thought I had Rec and Rec 2, and then Quarantine 2, right?
Yep.
But that's not true, right? So there's Rec 2 from 2009, was also directed by Jaume Balagueró and Paco Plaza, and that has a 66 on Rotten Tomatoes. So we're going to be covering that next week. And then they also have Rec 3, Genesis, which was just directed by Paco Plaza, but staying within that duo, right?
Yeah.
And this is kind of apart, completely apart, and it takes place at a wedding. It has 44% on Rotten Tomatoes, so not as good. But then Rec 4, which came out in 2014, is called Rec 4 Apocalypse. And this was directed by Jaume again. And this takes place right after Rec 2. So if you're going to watch 3 ever, it's going to be Rec 1, 2, and 4, which take place back to back.
Okay.
Right? And this actually has a 65% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I did not expect. Right? And Manuela Velasco also returns for her role as Angela Vidal.
So it seems likely that these movies operate the best when they stay within its original story frame. There is another March, God willing, in 2026.
And we could do 3 and 4.
And we could do 3 and 4. Or we can do 4 and 3. We'll see. Right?
Yeah. And then we got to have Quarantine 2 over Patreon.
And then just do the damn thing.
And we do all of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. We have 2026 solved.
Done it.
Yep. Meanwhile, over on the American front, Quarantine in 2008 was directed by John Dowdle and starred Jennifer Carpenter, which I wish we had more of in horror, has a 55% on Rotten Tomatoes. Dowdle also directed, by the way, the Poughkeepsie tapes, Devil, As Above, So Below, or as I call it, Under the Paris, and No Escape.
Wow. Quite the horror cred with Dowdle.
Poughkeepsie.
I have seen the Poughkeepsie tapes.
Yes.
Actually, I think I've seen all these movies.
Yes. I liked Devil.
I like Devil a lot too.
I did not like As Above, So Below as much.
So much
although I
better in
liked
a second watch.
The idea of it. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what No Escape is.
If I'm thinking correctly, it's like a much older movie with Ray Liotta, but I cannot be thinking of the
It's
right
newer.
movie then.
No, it's I'm put it in release order. So it's newer than everything.
Okay, well, I have no idea what that is then.
It's newer than Under the Paris, at least.
Oh, well, shit.
Which means it came out in the last 10 years. What about, you said the Poughkeepsie tapes weren't very good?
No, not really. I mean, it's very, very violent. So if it's not your bag.
Is it kind of like VHS?
No, kind of, yeah. I mean, like there's
Okay.
a serial killer that videotapes
Okay, yeah.
their things.
Anyway, so Quarantine, obviously Quarantine's probably his best, besides Devil. And then Quarantine 2, Terminal. See what they did there? Terminal, Contagion, Terminal. Was directed by John Pogue. And it's a virus on a plane and then in an airport terminal. See what they did there? Yeah. 67% on Rotten Tomatoes, but it only has 9 reviews. So the audience score is 34%. So I'm guessing that's closer to what it actually is. So yeah, that's what I said. We may not be done this month with this franchise. There's only one of these movies that are below like 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. Not that that's a litmus for us.
Yeah, no, because we've liked movies that sit around those ranges before.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I really, really like Rec. As we're going to get into, like, it's a fun watch and worthy of conversation. And I have never seen any of its sequels, nor have I seen Quarantine 2 for that matter.
Genesis Apocalypse.
It sounds like an album name.
So I guess the wedding is supposed to be like the genesis of it. Like, is the girl going to be there? Anyway, we have a cast.
We do.
The vast majority of it, it's a large cast too, actually.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of them just are not like working actors as far as I know.
There's a lot of speaking roles in this.
There is. Obviously, the only one that's like a big celebrity, or even notable celebrity would be Manuela Velasco, who played Angela Vidal, a reporter for While You're Sleeping. And she, of course, appears in Rec 2 and 4.
So she's not dead.
Apparently, that's a spoiler alert. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Ben Temple as doctor, the Center for Disease Control doctor who comes to the building, And then I thought was really interesting, the Tristana Nina Medeiros or whatever, the emaciated, monstery girl at the end, the original Patient Zero.
Mm-hmm.
She is played by Javier Botet, right? And I thought this was really interesting because he starred in Rec and Rec 2 as this character, but also as Mama in Mama.
Okay.
And a creature in, I think a woman again in Crimson Peak.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Crooked Man in Conjuring 2.
Okay.
It, as the hobo with the diseases and such.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And he played Slender Man. And then he was a creature in His House, which we, of course, had very high in our top 10 for that year.
Number 1.
And then lately, the latest is Dracula from Last Voyage of the Demeter. And so I had never really heard of this actor before, but like I've seen all of his creatures. So yeah, he's one of those people that like the guy that usually does like all the creatures for Guillermo del Toro. Mm-hmm. And then we have that actress that does like The Nun, and she was just recently we found out she was in Mulholland Drive as well as the garbage homeless guy.
That's right.
So like these people are like career monsters.
And that's cool, you know, because they know how to like operate in makeup, obviously, and are like they fit the bill. They're tall and gangly, right? And some of these movies are Guillermo del Toro. Like Guillermo, he produced Mama and directed Crimson Peak, I think.
Yes, and it helps that, Spanish speaker. But the reason he looks like this is at age 5, he was actually diagnosed with Marfan's, so Marfan syndrome, or the, hyperlaxity of certain body tissues. And this, of course, gifted him with a 6'7" tall frame and long, thin arms, legs, and fingers.
Oh, so they didn't have to put much.
So that's why it looked kind of unnatural, because it's all in camera.
And fucking scary.
Yes.
It's creepy. It is creepy makeup. And like one of my favorite things about this movie, and I'm sure that we will get into, is how fucking real all of it looks.
Because it is real. I mean, like, it's all in camera, then none of it's digital, right?
No, but I mean, just like from the way that it's shot to all the in-camera effects and everything, it really feels like you're watching a news segment, and it really like draws you into the movie and makes you feel super like tense.
Yeah,
It's perfect.
It's been rated as like one of the most claustrophobic and tense movies ever made, essentially.
And I would agree with that.
So this was initially conceived as a fairly inexpensive way, like all other found footage movies, fairly inexpensive way to make a horror film with no well-known actors or constructed sets. Also, found footage was popular at the time, reaching its absolute peak around this time, I'd say, with, actually critical successful films like Paranormal Activity and Cloverfield coming out this year or the next.
Yeah. Critically successful, I think, is like the key takeaway from that.
Because I think like really it was Blair Witch that kicked off this whole thing, right? Mm-hmm. Into popularity at least. And then it like ramped up and up and up to the point of 2007, 2008. And then it's sort of kind of ramping down, although we have some successful franchises that continued on, like Paranormal Activity, right?
That's right.
And Hell House.
The thing, if found footage is not going to go anywhere, it's a really easy way.
It's well established, and they've proven they can do it critically, in a critically acclaimed way.
And it's incredibly popular. Like these movies make a lot of money, whether or not critics like them, audience will go see it.
It's not even about how much money, it's like how much return, right? Like you can make it, and even if it makes $4 million, that's like, 400% return on your investment or something.
And like, as you can see with some of the titles that we've talked about, at least like it's a really effective way to like have different kinds of like horror subgenre in it too. Like Paranormal Activity is about ghosts. Cloverfield is about like American kaiju, like really big monsters. And like you can do all of these things with found footage. There's kind of like no end to what you can imagine and create.
Right. This was also inspired by shows like Cops, which Spain had its own version of, including like real crime scene investigation shows and urban legend detectives.
Oh,
right. And like late night shows like this. And I wanted to say that there's a quick note that I wanted to say about the X-Files episode X Cops, which kind of feels like this a little bit, right? But that actually debuted 7 years earlier in the year 2000. So it's pretty ahead of its time, only like 1 year after Blair Witch. Mm-hmm. But Cops had been on the air for quite a while, 10, 15 years at least, right? And so when X-Files did that version, it was like the first like kind of like horror found footage-y kind of version of that outside of like Blair Witch. And I thought it was really ahead of its time. I was kind of shocked to see that it was that early.
We watched that episode, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
With the gay couple and everything?
Yes. Yes, I recall now.
Love it. The directors also originally toyed with the idea of having the TV camera crew shadow some policemen, but they decided to go with firemen instead because they tend to be more popular and accepted by the general public, especially following 9/11.
For sure. And they can be hotter too.
Yeah, and there's just not a lot of public angst surrounding firemen versus like police.
I don't think anyone has anything bad to say about
politicized,
firemen. Yeah. They're just there to save lives and look handsome in calendars.
So principal photography took place in 2006 in Barcelona in a real apartment building. And this was filmed chronologically, which I love it when they do that. So the actors were actually never given a script in its entirety. So none of them knew if their character was going to die, sometimes not until the day they were actually filming their scenes. And that meant that the actors were more often than not stressed, nervous, and apprehensive on the days of filming, which of course is ideal qualities for the film itself.
Well, it certainly lends to their acting, right?
Yeah, but it was just really interesting that they did not know. And they were kind of given direction for each scene. Like, here's the story. Here's the things that we want you to say. Here's the story beats. Kind of like how Blair Witch was made, right? Which was like, go out with the camera crew. This is what we want you to do. This is what you want you to say. This is what we want to happen. You're going to hear this. This is how we want you to react. Things like that. And so it's a lot of impromptu stuff.
Which can be like incredibly nerve-wracking for an actor, like we just said, would make them seem stressed and nervous and apprehensive when they are there filming things because they don't really know what's going to happen in the future for their character. But it's good for story because everything sort of builds on top of each other instead of like having like, I don't know, too much exposition or whatnot, which we kind of get at the end. But like with these characters not knowing with these actors not knowing what's happening to their character, it really adds to that, just like building stress and plot.
I just can't imagine, like, if you're in the actual location and you're doing this chronologically and you're moving through this building and everything's there, you know, like, it's so easy to role play, you know, and like be actually intrigued with what's going to happen next and not know what's happening to your character. It's a really, really interesting aspect to the making of this movie. I really actually want to know how long it took them to film it. Like if it only took them like 14 days or something, or if it took them 45 days, I don't know. I think that would be really, really interesting.
I would agree. Like, I feel like this can be kind of a masterclass in like found footage creation.
And yeah, and it may not be studied enough because like while the average shot length in the film is 59 seconds, the longest shot is almost 17 minutes long, and I didn't realize that we had watched a oneer. I have almost always noticed if I'm watching a oneer. I did not notice that at all.
What is that longest shot?
I don't know. Probably them going up and down the stairs and into a room, and like, you know, I don't know.
Oh my God, you're right, because the camera doesn't stop recording. It's recording the whole time.
No, the only times that this camera is like when something is happening or if it gets bumped, you know, or if they rewind and it goes back. Like, it's fairly clever. They really make it diegetic, the edits, you know.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know. It's just super immersive. I mean, I've already said that, and like I also said, it moves at a fair clip, right? 59 seconds for an average shot length seems really quick. And the movie kind of feels that way.
Yeah. Let's talk about the story, the film itself for a little bit.
Okay.
So I feel like this movie wisely starts in the firehouse, right? We get a kind of an introduction to what they're doing, what they're filming, right? You know, they do follow the firehouse. You know, we get a little bit bored, which we're supposed to because we're, you know, with that character, Angela, who's reporting, and she's bored. We're bored, right? And then we finally get to go to the apartment. And we get the call. Someone's locked in their apartment and they hear screams or something. And we get to meet the neighbors. It's kind of a good mix of folks, which is really kind of interesting, right? You kind of get that microcosm vibe from this. And then I love entering a story after its beginning in a clever way. It's like a great way to subvert I bet you're wondering how we got here, you know?
Yeah.
Trope where it like freeze frames and you go back. I don't really like that. And so when our main character's story doesn't start the same way as this horror story does, like she missed that part. So did we. And it makes it that much more intriguing that she has to put together the pieces as we do. Like we are her.
You're right. And the good thing about this movie in the beginning, well before the horror action starts, is that we get a really good idea of who our main character is, right? What she does for a living, why. And she seems dedicated to it, you know, despite the, you know, why are you doing this kind of like mentality from other people.
Yeah.
And like, we see her this entire film. Like she's always there and she's always present. And we get that time to like get to know her before, you know, shit hits the fan.
And when it does hit the fan, the most important thing for her is to continue to tape everything.
That's right. Because at the end of the day, no matter what her show is like she's a journalist. Yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, I don't know that she cared as much, like despite what our synopsis says, I don't know that she was super career minded, right? I feel like she was doing it much like the people in there wanted to film. Like she was trying to tell the story that they needed to document what was happening here because this was unique and could end up catastrophic for them, and the people need to know the truth.
And that's what she said throughout this is like, we have to make sure that people know about what is going on here, because I mean, essentially, as we get into like the rest of the stuff in this movie, like civil liberties are taken away and things like that. So, but once they are at the apartment and we've gotten to know this microcosm a little bit, and we start to learn more about them as like the drama unfolds, but they finally make it up to that old woman's apartment.
Old woman,
man.
And like this is less scary maybe now because we've seen more things like it.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy rewatching this and remembering how scared I was the first time, and just like seeing things like slightly out of out of the light. She's just staring at them. You can't quite see her face, but she's covered in blood, not quite dressed all the way. And you have no idea what's happened. Something has happened here, and you don't know what. There's another girl there. They never explain who that really was, and when she lunges, like all of a sudden, okay, this is what's going on. Like,
Well, she's clearly gone through some trauma,
as Jamie Lee Curtis likes to say.
That's right. And, but when she does lunge. And then like, once that woman lunges at the fireman and takes a big hunk out of him, then the movie just doesn't stop really. Like it's kind of relentless in the panic and everything that this one moment creates.
Yeah. It's like, even when they are taking a breath, there's some grossness. Like we take a breath and they're like treating the wounds of these people. This guy's cheek is like bitten up. Right. And they're like putting a syringe in. It's really fucking nasty.
It's gross.
Yeah. This also begins the enforced quarantine. And it's interesting that because we see a trope in here where they blame the Chinese immigrants.
That's right.
Right. And I'm like, COVID, anyone?
For real.
And like this whole thing kind of reminds me of COVID. This was like, 15 years before COVID.
And if anything, like it should have been a good primer for the pandy, although we didn't, not that many people got their cheeks bit off, but.
No. And of course, this movie did not invent quarantine, right?
No, quarantine did.
Quarantine did. No, or pandemics or anything like that. But it was just interesting that I like that they fit that in here, and it's its own version of The Mist in a way, because we see how society kind of collapses in on itself and blames the weakest people in society. You know?
Yeah, finger pointing is happening like almost at every turn with the people who live in this apartment building.
They eat raw meat, Yeah, and it's like that was interesting to hear,
and. We start to get all this information from Angela as she's like interviewing these people that seems superfluous, really. But like all of her interviews sort of like combined together throughout the movie to give us the exposition that we didn't know that we needed at the time. It's so easy to disregard the things that people are saying to her. And then later on, it sort of pops back up again, either through dialogue or action or something.
I want this movie to be remade, but it's like in, what is it? East Texas or something.
God.
No, it's in West Texas where the measles outbreak is.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And like it's a measles mutation, and it's the anti-vaxxers.
We deserve that.
Anyway.
But yeah, all these people like trapped in the apartment. These people live together. They probably see each other every day. They're really quick to point a finger, and they really want someone to blame for being quarantined in here and trapped in this situation.
And I think it would have gotten just as bad or worse than The Mist, but they just don't have the chance because this thing is way more violent and spreads way more quickly and is much more of a present threat than the thing in The Mist was.
Well, and they
don't have time to stew in their juices, really.
They don't, and they don't have room to try to save themselves, and they could very easily go and like hide in their own apartments because that seems to be kind of the safest place sometimes, but they don't. They're trying to figure things out instead of protecting themselves, and like this movie runs really, really quickly, and people start to just drop.
Like the zombies, the movie runs quickly.
That's right.
Right. And so after all of this microcosm starts to happen, we know that something is happening. There's maybe a contagion. there's an old woman and the people are being bitten and they're coming to, then the other shoe drops. I mean, the body, literally. So like, there's a discussion to be had about rapid escalation in this movie with like the old woman, and that body drop.
Yep.
The body drop really is just like, okay, shit just got serious. Things are still happening.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's not over. The old woman maybe is not actually dead or something else, or maybe it's spread further than her. Right. She was bloody upon arrival, not after she bit someone. Right. So it's like, how was she bloody? Right. And so it's like, we know when this fireman who was up there basically falls and just splats blood everywhere, that we know shit has hit the fan and is still happening. And, they're shocked. We're shocked. It's one of the best, most effective jump scares in the film, and really any film.
You're right. And I mean, this movie has some really effective jump scares. I jumped at least like 2 or 3 times watching it last night, and I'd seen this movie before, but like watching these people sort of like drop off one by one and become zombies until like toward the end, when people are becoming zombies super, super quickly.
Yeah.
That it seems like there's literally no escape. But
they had an answer for everything. They were like, it depends on your blood type. We never know. It's so chaotic.
Well, I guess the most common blood type,
throwaway line,
I know, makes people turn faster, because it seems to be taking like moments by the end of this movie. And you have started to lose hope that anybody is going to survive.
Yeah, that little girl was, stewing in her juices for a long time before the movie started. Yeah. But, speaking of escalation, that little girl, like, she was normal and then she just wasn't.
That's right.
And she lunges, and that was another jump scare.
Mm-hmm.
And she runs after them or goes upstairs or whatever, and it's creepy.
Well, yeah, because as it turns out, I mean, this little girl, like, quite possibly had this contagion the longest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because her dog was licking her.
Yes, and we found out that it's the dog that was the origin.
That's right.
Of this case, right? Because the dog obviously got into the penthouse somehow.
Got something.
Or in the vents. We don't know.
That's the thing, is we don't need to know.
Who cares? Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's for a sequel to tell you. We don't need to know.
Yeah, and that's, speaking of which, they get to the penthouse of exposition. Which is, they're essentially running at breakneck speed to get out. And then, stop to read the newspapers on the wall, which feels a bit weird, after a first time watch. On my first watch, I was so intrigued that I barely noticed. But on subsequent watches, it does feel like an abrupt shift in momentum and motivation for the characters when they're like, we have to get the fuck out of here. And they open the door, close it, and they're like, oh, look at the newspapers.
I know. And they're like, look at this one. Oh, look at this one. It's the same girl.
And then they're rifling through papers. I'm like, what are you actually looking for? You're supposed to be looking for a tour.
That's right. Or whatever the fuck. I don't know. They were originally intending to go back downstairs to get out of the building, like, completely. But instead they go up. And they are faced with all their exposition, and we're given sort of an explanation as to why this is going on.
It's a unique zombie origin. We find out that the priest had attempted to isolate and cure a possession, right, of this girl through scientific means, but his, father doctor, but his research inadvertently weaponized it into this demonic infection, essentially making it transmissible like a virus through bites and bodily fluids.
I think, I mean, is that the actual thing? Like, she's actually possessed, right? Yeah. Or could she have just been sick and people were trying to cure her through religion?
The Vatican was trying to exorcise, and then they told this person to try and like cure her through scientific means. And that's what he was trying to do, hold up in Barcelona. And it's whatever, but that's what the story is. That's what they say. And that is what the research that I confirmed.
Okay. All right, good. Because I felt some question about that watching it last night. And I don't know that I had ever stopped to think about the things that were on those newspaper clippings, because like you, I didn't care. I was like wrapped up in the movie the first time that I watched this and was like, oh my gosh.
It's like Return of the Living Dead or something, right? Yeah. Someone turned demon zombies into some sort of science project, right?
But you're also correct that, like, on this watch, I noticed the abrupt shift in momentum. And I was like, 'cause this movie really, really goes super, super quickly. And then it stops to take a breath. And I think it does that because after they have, gone through all the expository newspaper clippings, we get to like some of the creepiest and scariest moments in the movie. So.
Right. The hatch door opening for the attic and the penthouse.
Right.
Yeah. And then we get kind of our downer ending, which is, I think I remember loving even then.
Yeah. I kind of like it. Like I said, like when you're watching this movie, you kind of start to lose hope for any of the characters. Like they're all going to die.
Yes. And if this movie was still the only one of its franchise, and it was just this movie, then I'd still think she was dead.
Yeah. I mean, and for all we know in these sequels, it's flashbacks for some reason, although it's found footage. So I don't know how you do a flashback. I guess you would show it, but, yeah, even before that downer ending, we get that cool creature though. When this like girl comes down from the attic of the penthouse and is like walking around, like trying to find them, trying to kill them. Like it's really, truly scary. And like that downer ending though, when she gets yanked away into the darkness is just a really good, effective way to end a horror movie.
And it's also like the very ending second of film is also like the cover of the DVD and the poster.
Yep. So it was right there all along, Mm-hmm. I'm okay with downer endings. Like I think that in most situations like this, that is a more likely outcome than someone surviving.
Yep. And it makes it feel even more real, cinema verite, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just in spirit of what it's trying to be and do. And it's very consistent with its own tone, very grounded.
Yep.
And, despite being, attacked by a 7 foot tall, zombie girl.
Well, that's what possession does to you. And I mean,
Zombino.
That's the thing is that like I've seen good and bad found footage horror movies. And like this is a good one because like at its essence, found footage should seem real. It should seem like something that you have discovered, like a random video on the internet that you're not supposed to watch. And this movie kind of feels like that. It doesn't try to tell you how the footage was found because that's superfluous to the story.
Yep.
And all it does is just make things seem like really fucking real, like you are watching the news. And I think that adds a level to this film than other found footage movies. I love Cloverfield, but I don't feel like that's really happening.
Well, it's intricate with these slides of like the government's filing and titling process of each scene or whatever. And it's just like, it's kind of, I see what they were doing, but I don't know.
They're trying to create a larger universe. And this is really just concerned about the story that's happening in this apartment. And that's good. They don't have to go too far outside of it. So I'm glad that we get some exposition, but that's unnecessary. Like even if they had just got to the penthouse and saw that creature, like that would have been enough for me. And I still would think that this movie is good. I don't think it's bad for the exposition, but I don't think it adds anything either.
No. Yeah. And you could argue that once they get in there, they're kind of taken aback by the state of the place.
Yeah.
And they're like, what the fuck is all of this? And they feel like the immediate danger went away. They've locked the door. Right. And so they probably feel a little bit more safe. And then the lights go out. And so you can understand why, but I'm on the fence with it.
Yeah, all that apartment was missing was a whole bunch of like red yarn, like tying everything together, but I don't know. It was gross. I wanted to get there and clean it. But is Wreck a horror movie?
Yes, Queen.
I mean, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
This is nothing but a horror movie. Were you scared while watching Wreck?
Yes, Queen.
Even on this watch?
Yeah, I got a little claustrophobic, got very tense. I got jump scared. I can say overall, I was, I got a little screwed.
It is. And the thing is that like, just like your husband said last night while watching it, you can see the jump scares coming sometimes from like a mile away and still. Yeah, it's effective and scary.
Except for that fucking body drop. My God.
I always forget about it too. And like, I've only seen this is probably the third time I've seen this movie, but, it's always effective.
And the camera up in the attic gag, like from Aliens or let's see, from The Ring earlier, like they didn't really do a lot new. Like, I want to say, like the night vision gag, right?
Yeah.
Like the night vision gag had been done once previously, as far as I know, and that was in The Descent 2 years earlier. And that got me so bad in the theater that I almost just like took out everyone around me.
Well, even before that, I mean, like Silence of the Lambs had it, you know, but it's
but they didn't,
different.
I don't think they did like the thing that's standing there, just that almost as if it had always been there.
Oh, no.
You know, like that kind of gag versus like that was more like plot, you know.
Well, and also like in Silence of the Lambs, it's to see our main character, not for the main character to see.
Yes. Yeah. And so that kind of abandoned our perspective in order for us to see. Yeah. So that's kind of a different conversation, Mr. Demi.
That's right.
Yeah. And this was more of a gag. That was more storytelling.
Out of 5 stars, what did you rate Rec?
I gave it a 4.5. I feel like this aged shockingly well with its cinema verite style and masterful makeup and practical effects.
I also gave it 4.5 stars. I think that this is a very near perfect horror movie.
Super economic.
Very much. And is really, really good with its storytelling and really good with its like sort of small characters that still seem like an integral part of the story.
Perfect time and pacing for a woman on the go.
For while you're sleeping.
Or on the verge.
But like the only holdback I have kind of is just that like that momentary shift in tension.
Oh, so you had a problem with it too?
Yeah, definitely. I this is the first time that I've had that problem though.
Yeah, it's not a first watch problem, right?
No.
So this is really a kind of a nitpick and subjective.
Exactly, because I would imagine I mean I've never seen this movie when I had Letterboxd at my disposal to, you know, hold all my scores. But I'm fairly certain the first time I saw Rec, I probably would have rated it 5 stars and thought that it was great and would watch it again. And so I still feel like I would watch this movie again. I would totally recommend it to people. And I think that it's very important. And I'm glad that you added that to scans.
Yes. We have by the way, we have the actual app scans now. Check the show notes. And you can run it through and all those different categories. It was hard to kind of rate this at the cinematography level.
Yeah.
Right. And it was hard to rate it at kind of like the sound level because everything's supposed to be in camera and kind of rough. But there is these moments in between beats of action or like quiet moments that are a little too quiet and they add something in the background that could be soundtrack. That's not quite soundtrack. Even when the cuts between, there might be a little bit of like a distorted sound that keeps you on edge. Mm-hmm. You know, that's like, was that actually recorded or is that a sound of the machine? You know what I mean? And so they really, really paid attention. And I think everything was intentional as far as like, what is in light? What is in shadow? How are we moving the camera? You know, what does this sound like even in the quietest, most kind of quote unquote boring moments? And I think that this was edited masterfully. And I just think it's just an amazing package that was put together.
I would agree with everything that you just said. And I think that all those things are very important when you're making a found footage movie. Like you have to be super intentional about everything that you're doing. And we're talking about a movie that is like an hour and 15 minutes long. So you know that they were intentional and they really went to the editing room and knew what to create. So,
but also kind of open to see what art kind of unfolded in front of them with telling the actors to just kind of make up their own shit. You know, and some of their own action. I'm sure a lot of the action beats, like shooting people and hitting people, had to be choreographed somewhat.
Yeah. But
a lot of the time, the camera would actually move while the people were fighting to get out of the way, and you'd hear what was happening more than you would see it. Right. And I thought that was kind of ingenious as well.
I think it'd be interesting to know, too. Like, I mean, obviously, if you're an actor who doesn't know what's happening to you when you show up to film that day, and then you're like, oh, we're going to handcuff you to the stairs. Right. But they don't tell the other actor who's trying to run away from them, like when they're going to jump or whatever. It just creates actual fear.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. You know, and I think that's what makes this movie very special and very important as a part of the found footage, like subgenre of horror. So. Yeah. Finally, and some would say most importantly, who's the hottest guy in Rec?
I want to say it's the paramedic intern or the doctor played by Ben Temple.
The paramedic intern, is that the main fireman that's with her?
No, the paramedic that was in the paramedic that was in the building. He was one of the tenants. He's the one that injected the cheek or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then later on, the doctor that came in the hazmat suit. That's played by Ben Temple.
So my vote is the doctor.
Okay, yeah.
For sure.
I want to say between the paramedic intern and the doctor, cooler heads did not prevail. But hey, still hot. Also, I feel like the more Muppety you are in this movie, the longer you last.
That's true. I mean, because it's fun to watch. Do you have some fun facts for me?
We keep filming. Don't touch the camera. For fuck's sake, Pablo. Turn on the light. It's broken, you stupid bitch. Turn it on.
There's not going to be any light, you stupid slut.
Yes, I have some fun facts.
Okay.
So Manuela Velasco really is a TV presenter in her native Spain. So it's even that much more believable to them in that audience.
Oh my God. That is clever casting.
Yes.
Was she popular?
I don't know.
Okay.
So this was released within 6 months of the similarly themed Zombie Diaries from 2006, as well as George A. Romero's Diary of the Dead from 2007, which we have already covered.
There's a movie called Zombie Diaries.
Yes.
That came out a year before Diary of the Dead.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And 6 months before this. I feel like of the three, this is the best. I'm sorry, Jorge.
Yeah. Diary of the Dead's not great.
No,
Jorge.
it's not. And I do wonder what Romero thought of this movie. Probably was just kicking himself.
Probably.
Yeah. But I don't, yeah. Because his was found footage as well.
No, I feel like he'd be happy for these filmmakers.
Yes, I think, yeah. Anyway, at around 18 minutes in, while filming the scene where the young fireman falls from the stairs, not a single actor knew that was going to happen.
Love it.
So the reactions of the characters were the real reactions of the actors themselves. So when we jump and scream, they're jumping and screaming. I guess they had no idea. I don't know how they did this. Like, they must have blocked them away from where the body was going to land, or they just like hoped for the best that they weren't going to get fucking sued. Because that fucking Muppety body just falls or whatever. And you're just like, and they all turn and scream and the blood goes everywhere.
That is fucking amazing.
I love it. Yeah.
So much.
I would have loved to be part of this movie.
For real.
Like, oh my God. The closing passages really were shot in complete darkness using an infrared camera. The actors had no idea what was taking place as they couldn't see a thing.
Okay, so I am really, with these fun facts, like getting into this like style of filmmaking with, or, you know, at least directing actors, right? Yeah. I kind of feel bad for the actors, but still, that's kind of fun.
Who made this? Friedkin?
I know. We're just going to shoot this gun in the darkness and see what happens.
Yeah. So lastly, the building where this was shot has a decorative sculpture or gargoyle on the top depicting a woman being grabbed by a monstrous creature by her foot, which of course is strongly similar to the final scene of this film. The directors never even noticed it until after they'd already shot the sequel.
Oh, that's some bad juju though. I don't know. I mean,
maybe they saw it and like internalized it and put it part of the story. I don't know.
Maybe, but that's cool. I think I want to go to Spain.
Mm-hmm. Well, that building was vandalized after this movie came out because all the kiddos wanted to go and hang out in the rec house or whatever.
But do you think that gargoyle's still up there?
Probably.
Okay. Didn't that cruise get off in Barcelona?
Barcelona.
Oh, okay.
Yes. We can make a pilgrimage.
That's right. We can wreck ourselves at wreck.
Well,
I think that just about wraps up our conversation on Wreck. As always, we would like to know what you think about this movie, maybe the found footage subgenre in general, or a conversation about all of it. You can find us on social media at The Film Flamers on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, all the places.
You can email us at tiredqueens@filmflamers.com or call our hotline at 972-666-7733. Oh, I want to get wrecked.
Wreck my pancake Areos.
They're already wrecked.
I know. Barely recognizable. As we mentioned earlier, we have more Wreck content coming out for you. We're talking Wreck 2 next week. And then over on Patreon, we're talking the American remake of Quarantine. So I cannot wait to compare and contrast these two movies.
That's right. And then, I don't know, maybe next year we'll do Quarantine 3, 4, and then, Wreck 3 and 4, and then Quarantine 2.
I mean, I think it sounds like a good plan now. So, okay. Well, Chris.
Well, Robert.
I think it's time for us to shut off all the lights and see if we can, I don't know.
Get pulled away by a father doctor.
I mean,
father doctor.
I'll get dragged away by a father doctor. That's fine. And have some sweet dreams. You think there are father doctors?
I'm sure. The Vatican has all kinds of father doctors, I'm sure.
Probably. All nefarious.
Some are hard at work right now in the Pope.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, Catholics.
That's okay. Conclave, though.
That's right.
About to be happening.
Someone get a found footage team in there.
Call John Lithgow.
Now, Ray Fiennes?